My name is Michael. I'm 44 years old, and 6 months ago my wife handed me the divorce papers in a fine leather folder while avoiding my eyes because, according to her, my presence ruined her new social image. Imagine dedicating 15 years of your life to building someone else's success, being the silent engine behind her career, only to be discarded like an old piece of furniture that no longer matches the curtains in her new office. She didn't leave me for another man, or at least that's what she claimed. She left me for something she considered far more important: status. She left because she was ashamed that her new friends, those women who were born into privilege and were now her colleagues, might find out that her husband wasn't a Silicon Valley CEO, but a man who preferred hard work and discretion. I watched her change her last name on social media before the judge had even signed the decree, erasing me from her life the way someone wipes away a coffee stain. What she forgot is that shame is a double-edged sword, and those who work so hard to hide their past often leave the keys to their future in the wrong hands. She wanted a life of luxury and appearances, and I decided to give her exactly that, but with a price her new social circle will never forgive. If you enjoy stories where betrayal has consequences and justice arrives without warning, leave a like and subscribe. Here we share real stories of revenge and lessons that are never forgotten. Emily and I met when we had nothing but ambition and a tiny apartment with a leaking ceiling. For more than a decade, we were a team. I worked in technical consulting, a job that pays well but doesn't come with the glamour of magazine covers. My work was always about solving problems behind the scenes, optimizing systems, making the complex look simple. She, on the other hand, had a gift for words and a natural elegance I always admired. When she decided she wanted to climb the ladder in the world of public relations for luxury brands, I was the first to tell her to quit her mediocre job and chase her dream. For 3 years I covered all our expenses. I paid for her master's degree, her networking trips, and even replaced her entire wardrobe because, according to her, in that world, image was everything. I didn't mind. To me, her success was mine. We were Michael and Emily, the couple who started from nothing, or at least that's what I believed. The change wasn't sudden. It was a slow erosion. Emily landed an executive position at a strategic consulting firm that managed accounts for extremely high net worth clients. Suddenly, weekends of pizza and movies turned into gala dinners and charity events that I was conveniently never invited to. At first she made excuses. "It's just for the sales team, Michael," or "You'd be bored, it's just women talking about jewelry." I trusted her, so I stayed home, taking care of the finances, the cleaning, and making sure her personal life was an oasis of calm so she could shine. I became the luxury butler of her career, the invisible support keeping everything standing while she took the applause. I began to notice that Emily no longer introduced me as her husband when we ran into someone from her work on the street. She would call me an old college friend, or worse, simply avoid introducing me altogether, pretending to be distracted by her phone. My clothes, which had always been practical and high quality, suddenly became too ordinary. My car, a sturdy and reliable vehicle, was now an inconvenience for the club parking. She started surrounding herself with a group of friends she called the Diamond Circle, women who measured a man's worth by the brand of his watch and the number of zeros in his investment account. Emily wanted to belong to that world with a desperation that bordered on obsession. I remember one specific night, a few months before the end. I had prepared a special dinner to celebrate our anniversary. She arrived late, smelling of an expensive perfume I hadn't bought for her. She sat down, barely touched the food, and looked at me with a mix of pity and contempt. She told me her friends had asked why she never brought her husband to gatherings at one of their country houses. She told me bluntly that she had said I was always traveling on business in Europe because she didn't want them to see me. "It's not that I don't love you, Michael," she said while playing with her wine glass. It's just that you don't fit into the level where I am now. My new position requires a projection you can't give me. Your simplicity makes me look small in front of them."
That night I understood the balance had been broken forever.
I was still the same man who supported her when she had nothing, but to her, that man had become an uncomfortable reminder of her humble beginnings. She wanted to erase her roots, and I was the deepest root of all. She started sleeping in the guest room, claiming she needed space to focus on her projects. Our conversations turned into logistical transactions: who was paying for what time the dry cleaning would arrive. The warmth evaporated, replaced by the cold marble she so desperately wanted for our kitchen. I kept watching in silence, analyzing her every move the way I did with failing systems at work. I knew something was brewing, but my pride wouldn't allow me to beg for affection that no longer existed.
She felt untouchable. Her salary had increased, her bonuses were generous, and her ego grew in proportion to her bank balance. She believed she was above our story, above our promises. What she didn't understand was that I knew every crack in her facade. I knew how much of her success was built on foundations I had designed myself. While she worried about which handbag to carry to impress her wealthy friends, I started noticing inconsistencies in the way she talked about her job. Arrogance tends to blind people to the smallest details, and in my world, details are everything. I stayed there, the invisible husband, the man she looked down on for being too ordinary, waiting to see how far she was willing to go to get rid of me. The atmosphere at home was electric, a tense calm before the final storm she herself was about to unleash.
The bomb exploded on a Tuesday afternoon. There were no screams, no tears, not even a trace of remorse on her face. Emily came home wrapped in a funeral-like silence, placed a leather folder on the entryway table, and asked me to sit down. She spoke to me as if I were a dissatisfied client cancelling a minor service contract. She said we couldn't go on, that her life had taken a direction in which I had become dead weight. What hurt most wasn't the word divorce, but the reason she delivered with complete coldness. "My friends keep asking about you, Michael, and I don't know what else to invent. I told them you were an international consultant, but I'm afraid that one day you'll show up at an event and they'll see you. Like this. So ordinary, so out of place. I'm embarrassed to introduce you. I'm embarrassed that my husband is someone who doesn't understand the difference between having money and having class.
I need a man who is on my level, not someone who settles for the mediocrity of a quiet life."
That word, embarrassed, lingered in the air. As she spoke, I remembered the nights I stayed awake drafting her reports so she would impress her bosses. I remembered how I sold my own car years earlier to pay for her first branding campaign. She didn't look at me. She looked at her $3,000 watch, impatient to finish the procedure. She handed me a settlement proposal that was an insult. She wanted me out of the apartment, which I had paid for 70% of, with barely a fraction of our savings. According to her, since her career now earned more, she deserved to keep almost everything to maintain her lifestyle.
The following days were a lesson in human cruelty.
Emily didn't just want a divorce. She wanted to erase me from her existence immediately to solidify her lie among her wealthy new friends. One afternoon I came back from work and found all my belongings in trash bags in the building hallway. She had changed the locks without warning. When I tried calling her, she sent a short text. "Don't make a scene, it's not elegant. Talk to my lawyer." I felt small, humiliated, as if 15 years of building a life together meant nothing. Seeing my books, my clothes, and my memories thrown on the floor while neighbors walked by with pity in their eyes was the breaking point. My anger wasn't explosive. It was an icy cold that settled deep in my chest. That same week, I learned through a mutual acquaintance that she was already planning a freedom party at an exclusive club. She told her friends she had finally gotten rid of the dead weight and was now ready to find someone of her caliber. What enraged me most was knowing she was using the contacts and databases I helped organize to inflate her company's results. She was stealing credit, lying about her assets, and using my silence as a shield. She thought that because I was a quiet, reserved man, I would simply accept the crumbs and disappear somewhere to mourn.
The expulsion was total. I found myself living in a rented apartment with the bare minimum while she posted photos on social media, raising crystal glasses alongside women who laughed at men like me. One day I saw her in a local society magazine, posing in our former living room, claiming full credit for the design and decor. In the interview, she said she had always been an independent woman who knew how to surround herself with the right people. Not a single mention of me. I was erased, civilly executed by the woman I gave everything to. I sat at my new, small desk in front of my computer and opened files she believed I would never review. For years, I had managed not only our finances, but also the technical support of her small consulting operation. Emily, in her arrogance and disdain for what she called boring technical matters, never bothered to change passwords or understand how the architecture of her own businesses worked. She believed I was too simple to be a threat. Fatal mistake. I saw her in a video posted by one of her friends, laughing as she joked that her ex was probably living somewhere in the suburbs, eating frozen meals. Public humiliation had become her favorite sport. But while she mocked my simplicity, I discovered something much darker in her accounting records. Emily's ambition had led her to make mistakes, the kind of mistakes people with class never forgive. She was diverting funds from her wealthy clients to maintain the appearance of a lifestyle she couldn't afford. She wasn't just ashamed of me, she was terrified of poverty, and that fear had made her careless. I stared at the screen in the dark. I felt no sadness, only a surgical determination. She wanted a world of appearances, wealthy friends and status. Fine, I would give her exactly that. But I would make sure all those people saw the reality behind her mask. Being thrown out of my own life became the fuel. She tossed me aside like garbage, never realizing that the garbage she despised held the keys to the fire that would consume her new, glittering world. I settled into a small, austere apartment, almost monastic in its simplicity. I didn't need more. My mind, trained to solve systemic crises, began working with a precision I had never before applied to my personal life. Emily believed I was just a simple technical consultant, someone who fixes things, without realizing that anyone who understands how an engine works from the inside knows exactly which wire to cut to make everything stop at the worst possible moment. I wasn't looking for immediate revenge, I was planning a structural demolition. The first thing I did was contact an old friend, an attorney who specializes in financial fraud and doesn't ask unnecessary questions when the case is solid. I handed him copies of the records Emily had left on my personal server. In her endless arrogance, she believed that deleting her laptop history was enough. She didn't know that for years, out of pure professional habit, I had configured automatic backups of our entire home network. I had emails, duplicate invoices, and most importantly, the transfers she made from her clients' accounts to pay for her own excesses. She was using the money of her wealthy friends to buy the gifts and dinners she used to impress them. It was a pyramid scheme of vanity. My plan was simple but lethal. I wasn't going to fight for the apartment or the furniture. I would let her feel like the winner in the divorce, let her believe she had defeated me. While she focused on humiliating me legally, I focused on the diamond circle. I discovered that the group's leader, a woman of impeccable lineage and real fortune, was being systematically defrauded by Emily. Emily was charging inflated fees for consulting services that never existed, using that money to pay the club membership where they all gathered. I moved with patience. I spent weeks documenting every move, every forged signature, every lie. It wasn't just about money. It was about betraying the trust of women who, despite their superficiality, valued loyalty within their circle above all else.
My lawyer warned me that presenting this during the divorce would only give me a better financial settlement, but I didn't want money. Money can be recovered. I wanted her to feel the same shame she tried to project onto me. I wanted her fall to be public, in front of the very people for whom she chose to discard 15 years of marriage. During this time, I rebuilt my own image. I didn't buy expensive suits or luxury cars. I invested in discretion and real power. I began consulting for a rival firm to the one Emily worked for, helping them identify vulnerabilities among the clients she managed. I didn't have to tell a single lie. I simply showed the truth in the numbers. My calm was my greatest strength. While she posted photos of luxury vacations, I was in a quiet office tightening the circle around her neck. One day, I received a call from her lawyer. Emily wanted to speed up the divorce process because she had plans to move to a more exclusive neighborhood. I smiled for the first time in weeks. I agreed to all her financial demands with a level of ease that should have raised her suspicions, but her ego interpreted my compliance as weakness. She believed I was defeated, that I had finally accepted my place as the mediocre man she always believed me to be. I signed the papers without hesitation, but I asked for one last favor: to attend a charity dinner her firm was organizing. I told her I wanted to say goodbye to a few professional contacts before stepping away for good. Emily agreed, not out of kindness, but out of cruelty. She wanted me there so I could witness her final triumph, to introduce me, this time, for the last time, as the failed ex-husband before removing me from her life forever. She thought that night would be my social funeral. What she didn't know was that I had already sent anonymous envelopes to 3 of her main clients and to her company's board of directors. Envelopes containing irrefutable proof of her fraudulent management. The stage was set. Patience is a virtue. Emily never cultivated, and it would be her lack of it that would lead her to disaster. While she tried on dresses in front of the mirror, I reviewed one last time the cash flow of her schemes. The counterattack wouldn't be an explosion, but a silent and total collapse of her reputation. Intelligence always defeats appearances, and I was about to prove that the man who embarrassed her was the only one who truly understood how the world she longed to shine in really worked. The night of the gala arrived. The ballroom was decorated with an opulence that screamed insecurity, filled with people who measured their worth by the shine of their accessories. Emily was in her element, wearing a dress that cost more than 3 months of my current salary, surrounded by her wealthy friends, laughing with that rehearsed falseness that now disgusted me. When she saw me arrive, she approached with a superior smile, took my arm firmly, not out of affection but to control me, and whispered in my ear, "Keep your mouth shut, Michael. Don't talk about your work. Don't talk about us. Just smile and leave early." She led me toward the center of the group, where Victoria stood, the most influential woman in the circle. Emily introduced me in a condescending tone. "Girls, you already know Michael. He's here just to say goodbye. He'll be moving away soon to, well, to find something more suited to his pace." The other women looked at me with a mix of indifference and pity. I said nothing. I simply reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and checked the time. It was 9 o'clock, exactly when the scheduled emails would arrive in everyone's inbox. The first sign was the sound of a notification on Victoria's phone. Then another, and another. The murmur in the room began to shift. It was no longer the noise of a party. It was the sound of realization. I watched as Victoria opened the attachment, a detailed spreadsheet bearing her forged signature, showing how thousands of dollars had been diverted from her charitable foundation into my wife's personal accounts to pay, ironically, for the jewelry she was wearing that very night. Victoria lifted her eyes from her phone. Her face, once warm, turned into a mask of stone. She looked at Emily, then at me, and back again at the woman who claimed to be her closest friend. Emily, still unaware of the disaster, tried to continue a joke about my simple tastes, but no one laughed. Silence spread like an oil spill.
"Emily," Victoria said in a voice that cut through the air like a blade.
"Would you care to explain why the gala account shows an excess of $50,000 that ended up in your personal savings account last month?" The color drained instantly from Emily's face. She began to stammer, saying it must be an administrative mistake, that surely her mediocre husband had configured something incorrectly in the system. She tried to blame me, in front of everyone, in a final act of desperation. That was when I stepped in, with the calmest and clearest voice I could muster.
"It's not a mistake, Emily. It's a trail. And I'm not the one who misconfigured the system. You're the one who forgot that a system always records the truth." I pulled a stack of printed documents from my pocket, physical copies of the transfers, and handed them to Victoria. "Here are the originals, Victoria." Emily thought I was too irrelevant to notice these movements, or perhaps she was too ashamed for me to know what she was doing. But the reality is that the man she despised was the only one protecting her. Now she'll have to protect herself. The impact was devastating. The friends who had surrounded her moments ago stepped away as if Emily carried something contagious. The embarrassment she once felt for me became nothing compared to the looks of disgust from the women she had tried so hard to impress. In that world, you can be cruel, you can be unfaithful, but you can never, ever be a fraud who steals from your own circle. Club security, discreetly alerted by Victoria's attorney, approached Emily.
There were no screams, just as she had once asked of me, but the scene was infinitely more humiliating. She was escorted toward the exit, while the flashes of a few phones captured her fall. Before they led her away, she looked at me with pure hatred, but also with a fear I had never seen before. She realized she hadn't just lost her marriage and her job, she had lost the identity she fought so hard to build.
I stayed a moment longer, just to observe the ruins of her ambition.
Victoria approached me and apologized for believing Emily's lies about my character. I told her it wasn't necessary. She asked what I would do now that the divorce left me with so little. I smiled, took one last sip of my drink and said, "I have my integrity and my ability. She has an expensive dress and a debt to justice she can't pay with appearances." I walked out slowly, feeling the weight of the world fall onto her shoulders, while mine felt, for the first time in years, completely light.
The criminal proceedings against Emily were swift and merciless.
Her friends, the very women who had once been her reason for living, were the first to testify against her. They didn't do it out of ethics, but out of spite. They could not forgive that an outsider had deceived them in such a crude way. She lost the apartment, her professional license, and every trace of the reputation she tried to buy with my effort. The last I heard, she was living in a small rented room, working a basic administrative job where no one knows her name and where her designer suits have no place. Ironically, she ended up living the simple, anonymous life she once despised in me, but without the peace of mind that only honesty can provide.
As for me, I did not chase the wealth she had always craved.
My small technical consulting firm flourished, not through social connections, but through my real ability to solve problems. I never remarried, nor do I feel the need to. I learned that the company of someone who is ashamed of your essence is the most extreme form of loneliness. Now, when I walk down the street, I don't care whether my watch is a luxury brand or whether my car is 10 years old. I know who I am, and I know what I'm worth. The silence in my new home is not emptiness, it is freedom. Sometimes I wonder if, in her lonely nights, she finally understands that status is a shadow that disappears when the lights go out, while character is what remains when you have nothing left to show. She wanted a man who was on her level, but she never understood that height is not measured from the ground to your wallet, but from your chest to your conscience. She left me out of shame and ended up becoming the embodiment of that very word. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's watching life collect its debts. If this story felt as intense to you as it was for me to live it, leave a like and tell me in the comments what you would have done. And if you're not subscribed yet, turn on notifications so you don't miss the next stories.